Okay, so thanks everyone for joining this session. 3D configuration as part of a SAP standard repertoire for variant manufacturers with Yusuf. He's going to run us through this. Over to you, Yusuf.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for joining, everyone. Hi again. The motivation for this title of this presentation is coming from the situation right now and also over the last years that 3D configuration and visualization, we'll come back later to the differences, is becoming more and more a kind of standard, not only for us as the people developing and implementing those kind of stuff, but also for the customers and users of SAP VC. And so based on the fact that everything is going more and more service related and service-based architecture way, we tried and we, I think, succeed to also use this kind of approach for 3D configuration, which was in the past kind of, let's say, different approach. And with this presentation, I would like to show you where we are standing and also what the framework and the environment for us is. Okay, let's start with the, okay, doesn't move, why? Yeah. Okay, just a short part about us, of course, so that you know more about Networker Solutions than me. But then I will go into the current aspects we have right now around the 3D configuration world in the VC ecosystem. And then, of course, a short brief introduction to the technical architecture behind it and the data model side. And then, of course, how to come from the data model of VC to the visualization. Some infos about me, maybe some of you know me, others don't. I'm now for over 20 years in the business with configuration, not always SAP. I started with a non-SAP environment, working environment, where we also already did integrations and interfaces. But as said, it was more interface driven. And today I talk about integration of services and not about interfaces. Yeah, I have a kind of focus on the end-to-end process and starting with every aspect in the logistic chain, supply chain, management chain within SAP, the SAP world. And I'm specialized in this kind of 3D solutions and UX-oriented solutions. Currently working for Networker Solutions as management consultant, and as you can also see, different industries. We work with every kind of customer and every kind of product to be configured. I'm a member of the board of the CWG, a long history, not so long as others, but it's long. And yeah, currently we are also organizing together with SAP the conference in St. Leon Road at the location of SAP. There we come together with German-speaking users of SAP around all topics of variant configuration SAP. I can recommend it for all of you who are German-speaking. Yeah, Networker Solutions and also there's Trilux Digital Solutions. We are a joint venture. Trilux Digital Solutions is a joint venture. You will see later, Trilux is one of our customers and also part of this joint venture. We separated a little bit the topics with my colleagues. So as you can see on the right side, Networker Solutions with a strong expertise in variant configuration, LOVC, AVC, and all the state-of-the-art stuff. We also have departments which are not which are independent with cybersecurity and contract management SAP historically. And on the left side, you see Trilux Digital Solutions, TDS, where we have a lot of technology development. We have there 3D and visualization as a team, and we have AI, we have S/4HANA add-ons, we have PIM and DAM. And yeah, it works really well, having a combination of consultancy expertise combined with development and technology. Yeah, the differences, as I said, there is, from our point of view, a difference, and sometimes it's used similar or maybe also in parallel If you talk about 3D and SAP, sometimes visualization is mixed up with interactive 3D configuration. And there is a difference, as we have on the visualization side, more the representation of the configuration as seen in different other examples in the market. And you can put this 3D object and later into a document or in any kind of output. And of course, you have to you can visualize the whole part list and the configuration, which is done. With the interactive 3D configuration, we have more the possibility of going directly into the 3D object. Sometimes with some products it makes sense. With some products it makes no sense, vice versa. So it has to be decided. The product is more a kind of interactive object to configure, or is it just a visualization in the end? And so a user can select the components, change characteristics directly in the 3D, and get the context menu for the next step and so on, as most of you should know, because all of us have maybe tried to configure something also in 3D or even graphically. And can be an alternative user interface, what we also know from past projects, that you say, hey, I have a different user interface with just 3D configuration and SAP in the background. So it brings more to the table. But of course, both can be used in parallel, and per user role, you can decide who should work with a visualization and should work with a 3D interactive configuration. Here's an example: field sales can work on site together with the customer directly in a 3D environment, where maybe the internal people just need an extra visualization of the configuration. Why I'm talking about a standard or new standard? Maybe some of you know that in the past, also in the past, 3D projects or 3D solutions were also kind of a regular work. Maybe some of you also in the companies you work right now in the past have had experiences with 3D configuration, but it was shaped by non-SAP solutions, external configurators. As I said, I also started like that. Started with that, and the projects, they got a lot of, let's say, effort needed, because you had the stuff on the external configurator side and also on the interface and then the process within SAP. So that some companies also said, okay, the effort is too high and the value I get is too low. So postponing it or not using it, or just having a POC maybe and never going into productive environments with it. One reason, as I said, is the topic of redundancy and the relationship knowledge you have set up in the past in your SAP system also has to be used in the 3D system. And I call them former solutions. Of course, they pushed us in a way, because we tried to understand how to bring things together. And the new standard for us is to say, okay, native SAP plus what we call, in this case, a 3D engine. And as you can see there, it's a industry standard we use as 3D component, but in using it in a service-based environment. But we'll go to detail later. The standard communication, as I said, is via services, which was also not technically not so easy in the past. And now, of course, with all the possibilities, we have the chance to set up a whole service-based architecture. And of course, the data modeling and the data maintenance, also with the Mocha approach, to do it once and centralized and use it on different applications. I add the G to Mocha, come to it later. It stands for graphic. Also very important is that we are not developing coming from outside SAP. We are developing coming from the SAP ecosystem and whole SAP technology on our back. And this helps a lot to set up this kind of solution, which is then, of course, completely VC orientated. Okay, maybe a little sorry, when I first met Marin, one CWG conference many years ago. First time I met him, and I was working for a company, as I said, doing 3D configurators, and then of course having these interfaces to SAP, and I was really enthusiastic and told him how nice and great these projects are. And Martin, as we know him, said, yeah, sounds good, but it's not close enough to VC. That was what he said. And it was a kind of motivation for me also the later years to have a lot of conversations and discussions with him, how this approach should be in the future. And as a benefit for the companies then or I worked for, and now Networker Solutions, I always had a team who's also pushing scenarios. And it's really great to have the VC people and the VC know-how, bringing it together with 3D experts, and something great comes out of it. So in one sentence, SAP VC, ABC or LOVC makes no difference, is therefore the leading system now, also for the graphical configuration and visualization of variant products. So we are shifting a little bit and saying, hey, it's not, you're not introducing a 3D configurator, you're just using your SAP VC with 3D configuration. So it's a different approach. What does this mean? With this decision as a leading system, SAP as the leading system also for configuration, graphical configuration of the variants and configurable products. It's fully part of the landscape. And so we have this holistic approach to say, for a company, just adding something on, the classical add-on to your SAP VC environment. So the general architecture, not in detail, but just as an overview for you. And you can see on the left side, the model once configure anywhere sentence also here. We have as backend systems, AVC, S4HANA or SAP ERP with AVC, LOVC, or CPQ as the engines, and also the providers for the configuration. And with this microservice platform in between, there just are front ends for us. Front ends we need to use, we are using the configuration and adding 3D to it. And you have front ends where 3D is part of the whole front end scenario. Like in these examples, as I said, these are examples because you can continue and finding new touch points. You have the website. The example I will show later is this kind of scenario where there's a website where the customer configures and visualizes a product. Of course, it works also with a web shop e-commerce scenario where you also have the order process started. Ricardo from the presentation before, for us, for example, this scenario would be just another touch point. And it's our approach is not doing monolithic approaches, but as I said, open scenario, just choose the front end and include visualization. Next one, starting with CRM, more of a field sales approach, can be used also there to start the process from CRM and having visualization in your front ends. Then, of course, the maybe classical approach to say, hey, my inside sales also should visualize or 3D configure in 3D, and having then the integration to of course, SAP GUI who's able to integrate the visualization. We're talking, of course, about Fiori over interfaces and so on. And what's also interesting, and I think yesterday Hank also had a nice example, how the approach to say, hey, I would like to give more planning functionality to the user also can be supported with our approach. Why? Because it's not CAD, it's not computer-aided design, it's configuration and 3D visualization, but with planning functionality. Maybe the example I have later shows a little bit how it can look like, but again, there are restrictions. We are not do not want to develop a CAD system or something like this. It's just how to support the user in the right way without saying to him, hey, you need a CAD system to make your planning. So it's always a kind of specific approach. Okay, So when I say model once graphically configure anywhere, means the full support of this approach extended with graphics. Yeah. So we have VC as standing for, of course, ABC, LOVC. And there is this kind of standard technology we develop and we deliver, but not developing, of course, the 3D engine. That was a decision, easy decision to say, no, we don't want to make an development of a 3D engine. We want to use a standard which is available on the market and which is also a proven technology. But what we did is to create our own 3D backend, developed 3D backend, which means where you can maintain the rules, the graphical rules, but no configuration logic or no dependencies, because these are coming from SAP in VC. So it's just adding the missing part for real 3D configuration, and that's what we add. And there are always, as the examples before, there are the consumers, like the sales, and there, for example, with the possibility also in CPQ, in SAP CPQ, to visualize the configured product and also to export and integrate this 3D output into your quotes and give it to the customer and so on. On the production side, what can be an example? Yeah, I can use the 3D visual in the order and give it to the shop floor if needed, into the production order, and giving a kind of help to the employee in the shop floor to work also with the representation of the product configured and then to be processed. And of course, I think one of the most interesting and potential, where the most potential is in e-commerce, the web shop with a 3D viewer, kind of standard, of course, maybe for some products or in the future. And last but not least, also a corporate website can use a 3D planner for his final or her final customer. So if it's not only connected to SAP as in the past, and I said I was sitting on that side of the table and we were connecting our configurator, 3D configurator to SAP, but now I'm talking about 3D configuration in SAP. What does this mean? This has different also elements in it. First one, there's a technical side of the things, means of course, a pro argument, the front end and back end is in one overall SAP system. So we don't have a kind of external front end, which is developed also in maybe a kind of own language or technology. No, it's the front ends also SAP supports in standard. And I have a backend system, which is also pure SAP. And so always integrated in the ecosystem of SAP. What does it mean for my organization? It means that I can unify the teams and the know-how about around VC with the 3D competence and know-how. Yeah, I mean, of course, every company has with technical products, especially the R&D department, which sometimes people are always also sitting or really good in 3D, not only from the technical approach, but also from the visualization approach. You can use data which is available, but also you can use external sources to create material, which is later needed in the visualization. So it comes together, people there are working together on the stuff, and it's not like I have a 3D project outside and later I just have the integration, but it's working directly together in the organization. So you can use your structures which are already available. And for your strategy as a company means this whole extension with 3D is not that typical big 3D project. It's just an extension, which can then be or a change in the system, which can be done in a less complex and extensive way. And as I said before, it's always from VC perspective. Yeah? It's nothing external where you then later think, okay, maybe it was a different way we chose, but it was not the right one. In the end, it's always VC leads also your decision to say how to integrate a 3D functionality. Yeah, this is based on my experiences and my environment to, of course, it's just a point of view. Maybe someone else would say, okay, I'm not 100%, I'm not sure if this is right, what you're writing there. So it's not also not judging or something like that. It's just on experience. And I don't want to talk about the non-sub solutions. I would like to talk about the 3D sub solution. And there, I think the most interesting part, what the pros are, is as you can see also in the next slide, the unique selling points there with the Mocha approach and the redundancy you avoid, because some of the functionality we also offer, others also offer, and there are different ways to implement. But if you say, I'm using all the advantages I get in the moment from SAP and the development from SAP, then you should absolutely go Mocha, and you should go reducing redundancy. So it makes no sense to make maybe things which are from the technology some years behind. And of course, it is a cloud-based solution. So also from the aspect of integrating it into your organization, it's not a change regarding also the licensing or the cloud environment to use. Let's take a look on an example. This example is from Trilux. Trilux is one of the leading manufacturers for lighting systems, really complex ones. And one part of their product portfolio is outdoor light systems, in this case called Jovi. And we are working on a solution there to configure and visualize this product. And I would like to use videos just for convenience. And as you can see, okay, right, directly here, starting point here was, I can go back a little, was a high quality rendered object. So this is not the 3D model in this case. You can decide how to maximize or how the value of or the quality of the object. Of course, there are no real boundaries. As you know, rendered 3D objects, it's really realistic, photorealistic. But it's a decision you make, because there's a lot of effort you put in. There's, of course, the size of data. But for some product, it makes sense to just use pre-rendered stuff. And for some projects in the process of configuration, it makes sense to use the less high quality, but still engaging 3D. Means, in this case, as I said, starting with this pre-rendered stuff, and on the right side you see already the characteristics and options, and the highlight is that these are directly coming from VC. As I said, there's a service we developed, and it's not only the characteristics values, but depending on them also a price is found. Also, we use also the pricing in SAP as a service then, and yeah, and create the visualization in parallel. So let's see what happens when we go on. Okay, I choose here which type. It's the 15 or 17. 70 is of course bigger, and I can already make choose some options, and you will see if I then have changed characteristics, also the available options are changing. So we are really using the VC engine, which is working in the background, and just the visualization is in real time generated on the left. Maybe just to stop here. You see a front end here, which was defined not by us, but by the customer, and even more by the department. It's of course sales and marketing orientated, and they said how they would like to have it. And with this, I would like to make you understand that we are not delivering a kind of standard interface, user interface. It's completely open, means the front end is designed per decision, what kind of front end you need based on the front end technologies which are available. You do React there, and then the front end developers develop the front end, and the service is used within it. Another scenario could be that, for example, the visualization is not on the left, but is on the right, or it's just a small frame on the right side, or even it's completely hidden, means just in the background. And if you say, now I would like to see the visualization, you open it in with a link or with a button. So this is completely free. And as you can see, and on top, it's integrated into the CI of 3Lux because it's running on the website. It's an open, in this case, it's the test system, of course, but it's integrated in the website. So it's also corporate identity. And the freedom is to say how you want to design it. And there are other scenarios where the front end is different. Okay. So let's go on. So I continue with the configuration itself. Went back to the non-3D. Go back to the 3D, so I can switch whenever I want. So there's a button. Can it also look different? As I said, it's free in the design. Here the color change, the length of the cable I choose. Then I choose an option to have it UV safe. And as you can see you can stop here again. Yeah. On top, you see a price, which is in this case, of course, a kind of test system and test price, a calculated price coming from the SAP pricing. And of course, we have here, in this case, on the right of the price, an ID for this configuration. Means this can be stored, this ID stores the configuration, and then you can use the ID to bring up the configuration again, change it, and so on. And it's can be processed anywhere where the access to this configuration is needed. So we store the configuration in this way. And now you have seen, after having the configuration finished, I get the opportunity to export some stuff. In this case, it's German. So maybe just the first one, the specifications are meant with this of the configuration of the product, and they are generated, and then they will be available based on the configuration, of course. And in that case, it's just from the here also for the tender, because of course here there are tender processes. As you can see here, the configuration specifics itself. In this case, the pre-rendered visual is inside the document, and on the left side, a more technical drawing. But of course, here the 3D itself could be integrated, and also technically it's possible to integrate the real 3D object into a PDF, for example. But as I said, these are extensions which are technically possible, and the decision is how far do you want to go to increase the engagement. Yeah, here's the ID, which can be, as I said, then later the same front end added, and then the configuration will be shown. Also on top, you see the description of the product generated as text string based on the configuration. And here also very interesting from my point of view, because it's not so typical, but as I said, the ones who had to decide how it should look like said, we would like to have a kind of undo of the option chosen by using a delete symbol. You know, you have the configuration, and normally we all know you just maybe change via drop down or whatever, choose another option, and then you go back. But here it is by using a delete function, yeah, to go back to a different characteristics and option. Okay, let's continue. See what we have. Okay, here also the lumen lux is choosable, as I said, the options are just available if the configuration allows also that lux value. And yeah, here I switch back. Okay, you can also stop it here because I have a different scenario, which is also from my point of view very interesting. I would like to show it to you. So to close this one and start the other one. As I said, the configuration or 3D configuration is not just visualization of one product, but also can be a combination, can be a scenario or whatever. And here, for example, that's the same system, light system, but here we use a scene, a room or whatever. In this case, it's the street where this product later is also placed. And the engine allows to use the scenario, but the configuration itself of the light system is also usable here. So I think it will come now that you do the whole configuration by choosing, for example, the size, not in the single 3D object we had before, but here directly within the scenario where the product is used. And here comes some one more aspect, which is of course very product specific, nothing standard. We also configure here the effect of the light on an object, for example. Of course, here you want to see, if I choose this lux, what does it mean for the street and the whole scenario? And of course, it's not the final planning, but it's, for example, the user who's using this touch point to have to see the impact of the configuration he does with this light specifications is also included in this configurator. So which I choose an option and directly the visual feedback, how it would look like from the light effect or the brightness and so on. Yeah, you see, I changed, and then I also have a different covering of the street. I'm not an expert for light planning, so I would like to add more information what's happening, but I think the idea is clear what's meant here. And this is also very interesting. Trilux products are I don't think that these are Trilux products, but they're really interesting because if you configure light, you have to include a lot of aspects and also the following process. And this is also very interesting because the export functionality is also a big part of 3D configuration and visualization. Sometimes you want to use the configured results and the 3D object in the following process. For example, giving it to a planner, giving it to a cut specialist or whatever. So with a flexible and powerful engine, you can do a lot there. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Oh, just because I would like to use the rest of the time. No deep dive because I'm not a developer, just to give you an idea what's behind it. Okay, let's go here. Technical architecture. So the 3D engine, what were the criteria to say to choose the right one? The high quality of representation, as I said, you see on the right side, it's an example for a photorealistic approach. We should be able. So we have 3D objects, we have the surfaces and the light sources. These all have to be available, these functions, and available in the 3D engine. So it must be multi-device. We all want to use also smartphones or other devices which are mobile. And so we have to support multi-device for browser applications. and other platforms, of course, native Mac OS or Android and so on, iOS and Android and so on. And of course, the openness, the extendable architecture. On the right side, you see technologies which are available for this kind of approach. And in the end, with this industry standards, we want to reduce the development effort. And in the end, it was the decision to use Unity, coming from more gaming scenarios, but also now a standard for industrial solutions. The data flow also is a short information. As I said, single source of truth is the configuration model in VC. And with the enrichment of 3D data with the 3D backend, there we have the 3D objects, but also the, for example, color codes, the textures to have the right visualization on the surface. We have rules which are, of course, not maintained in SAP, like collisions, but also how things are connected to each other and so on. These are all also in the 3D backend. And as I said, the level of the front-end level, which means web front-ends, web-based front-ends, and the 3D viewer or the 3D configuration in it. Okay, and how do we manage the data flow? The keyword is message queue for, of course, a service-based architecture, looking and have the intercommunication with the services with a message queue, using microservices then for the communication between the components, and for the front end, back end, as I said, the 3D backend, and of course a kind of API for the communication. This brings flexibility and also the scalability to the game. Yeah. And how to come to the 3D data model? Yeah, of course, the SAP data model, I can keep it short, it's clear for all of you. That's where the data model itself is created. And then we have, as I said, the 3D backend, which is then additional, of course, as a new environment. The 3D modeling has to work with the 3D data, for example, the color definitions, textures, and so on. The materials, but not the materials we know as KMATs, but the 3D materials in that case. Yeah, the graphical dependencies, as I said, can be fixed, but also can be dynamic. Means in the 3D configuration, you have your own rules, which are just 3D and geometry driven. And I showed you the example with the scene. Also, the scene has to be maintained, of course, outside of SAP. There's nothing to do with SAP in that case. And so, how does it look like? So this is, of course, a 3D model, which is maintained in the 3D environment. So we have the 3D object. We have these textures, which are then put onto the 3D object. And of course, there's an interaction with the external data then in between the 3D visualization and this external data. So I'm often asked, is this one object? No, it's not. The 3D object itself can be split into different parts. And this also means that we are not storing a 3D object for every variant or every combination. We just have kind of parametric approach where then every component, which is then splitted, can also be configured. So we have kind of also multi-level approach there. And so-called primitives are then an addition. And this is the surface thing. So shiny, glossy, all this stuff is also, of course, maintained in the 3D backend environment. Light sources, of course, also, if you have to want to have also use shadow and so on. Again, this is really the max approach. And for many, many products, you don't have to go this deep, but I would like to show you how far it can go, that you also use light options there. So overall, what does it mean? 3D configuration is more than just displaying the configuration result. Yeah, we have this bidirectional communication. We have drag and drop functionality, which can be, which is accessible. Yeah, the user interaction, animation, all this stuff is now available within a SAP scenario. Again, we are not the creators of 3D configuration. I'm working now 20 years in the business, and there are companies who just doing that, but we are doing it within SAP. And this is, I think, a big asset. Thank you very much for listening and watching.
Thanks a lot, Yusuf. Do we have any questions from the room? We do.
Yeah, that's interesting because we did something also graphical, but I think it's beyond that. So it would be very interesting because we are also working in the engineering part. Can you incorporate 3D CAD models that were created by engineering, and then are they then derived for this case?
Yeah, but they are not the, let's say, a 100% source. They are just initial data coming, and then we reduce it to the visualization level. Know what I mean?
Cool.
It's not the full CAD model because it's too big. It's not needed in this scenario, but we reduce it to the level we can use then in the visualization. So you're free to decide how you would like to minimize the let's say the complexity within.
So technically, it could be that engineering creates these CAD models. You take them as a source, convert them for this purpose, and then you can serve a graphical CPQ process. And then onwards, do any kind what is necessary down the road. Whether it's necessary based on the actual CAD models or continue with these.
So it's mostly starting with CAD models, and of course you're free to use 3D applications to directly make 3D, which is more like on the visualization and high-level quality side. But most companies start with CAD models. And then, of course, for specific also end user products, they're also available 3D, high-level 3D, high-quality 3D, because for printing and whatever, they already have something. But many technical products rely on CAD models, and that's mainly the main entry point into the whole implementation. And it's really the engine supports the direct import and then making the refinements.
Okay, and then continues to work with the refinements. Okay.
And you have a 3D object in this environment.
That's cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No, let me check online. There's no new question online either. So thank you, Yusuf, for our presentation. That's
You're welcome.